Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of me talking about celebrity pastors.
I am Dr. Cece, and I'm so glad that you have joined me today for a conversation about actually key messages from pastors and their designer clothing. Whether we know it or not, everything that we choose to wear says something about who we are as people. It says something about who we represent. And actually, what I've found is that our clothing communicates for us. It's a form of nonverbal communication, a form of even visual representations. When people see us, they actually see what we're wearing and make judgments, perceptions, all kinds of thoughts about what we wear. But also, we can do the same when we look at other people. In academia, clothing as a form of communication, or fashion, let's say more so fashion as a form of communication, is still a developing area of research and scholarship. So it's interesting because fashion can have these more subjective, or what we call polysemic meanings, which means people can look at them and see so many different things. They can see and have different messages. So it doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, which is so interesting to me and fascinating just about communication as a whole. It's one of the things that we all can do, whether we communicate verbally or non-verbally, yet what we say, what we represent, what we see, it can all be different. And yet we still have takeaways from it. Now, in a previous video, I go into detail about the idea of celebrity and association. So I would encourage you to watch that. I say pastors a lot, but again, this can apply to anyone that you're seeing in leadership, ministry leadership, because I understand that there are people who go by apostle, prophet, evangelist, whatever they choose to go by, whatever title. This can apply to them if they associate with that celebrity structure or ideal. Please understand, these are just general themes that I'm providing to you with a bit more context. My dissertation actually goes into full detail.
I'll place a link to that in the description so that you can go to it if you have access to it and you can actually see that.
But here we go. A few key messages associated with pastors considered celebrity. Let's just say celebrity pastors' clothing. Their clothing represents fashion appreciation. There are a lot of pastors that they say they just actually like and appreciate fashion. And in doing that, their choice to wear clothing that is considered designer clothing is a nod to that. It also relates to their uniqueness. They don't want to be like everybody else, although there have been times where we've seen some of them wear the same pieces. Still, they want to do things a little differently than maybe what they have seen traditionally, or maybe even what they did traditionally. We're seeing several pastors actually get away from more of the suit. And when I say several pastors, not all, but several who are in this category wear more casual streetwear clothing on Sunday mornings or Sunday afternoons, whenever they're doing their services, as opposed to more traditional or even robes, that which is considered more aligned with clergy. When they wear designer clothing particularly, it does align them more so with celebrity status and identification, because in this time period, in this contemporary age, we do usually think about people who wear more designer clothing or even watches or jewelry to have the means to afford it. And so there is an idea that they are actually able to fund their purchases. And that, of course, is something I will get into later, because that also is a controversial aspect of pastors wearing designer clothing. But it is a part of them actually wearing it in public. Some of them talked about how they are not really comfortable with public ministry, and their clothing is actually a representation of that. And so there sometimes is this assumption that all pastors are comfortable and happy and very willing to be in public ministry. And I'm not saying that they're not, but several of them, it's more so about their calling as opposed to them just wanting to be out in the forefront. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but some pastors actually are probably more adverse to being in the spotlight, but it's a part of their calling. They have to and have been called to teach God's people. And so with that, yes, they would like to be presentable. It seems that for sometimes people just think that wearing designer clothing, it helps you be more relatable, or it helps you relate more to culture and those that you're serving, or even it's an automatic entry into cool, and I'm not saying that that's their reason or sole reason for doing it, but it is something about when pastors particularly, or those in the forefront, do wear designer clothing. There are some, and I'm not saying everyone, but there are some that it does indicate or show that they believe that it's acceptable. Okay. And let's be real too. Some of them just like clothes. They just enjoy what they're wearing. And so they choose to put it on. Or maybe even in one situation, somebody was given a belt, a worship leader, she was given a belt from her friend because she needed a belt. And so we do have instances like that. And of course, that's the time when she was photographed. And that's the photo that was posted for everyone to see, not her sharing it. Someone else shared it. And so these are the kind of things that we're seeing, that they don't even have to put this or promote this themselves. In some cases, they are actually photographed in the designer clothing, and that's what's being used to share with the public. Now, as a result of this, yes, for some, their stewardship is called into question. And that is a whole other line of discussion. And in some cases, yes, controversy, but that's something that pastors have to and must kind of wade through if they choose to wear, and I say choose to wear designer clothing, but no matter what you wear, your image is on display, and that perception is what people see. And now there are some pastors that are like, look, I don't really care what I have on. I really just want to be presentable. But in doing that, they are actually requesting help, needing help from others. And we're talking about professionals in the fashion industry, whether that's image consultants, stylists, tailors, just to make sure they are top notch. Again, some of them really do just like fashion. They enjoy it. They're like, look, I appreciate it. I want to make sure I'm fresh. I'm sure there are definitely those that do it to project and as pomp and circumstance to really put themselves out there. And again, that designer clothing and wearing designer clothing is not meaning a shepherd, a pastor, those who are aligning themselves as spiritual leadership or portraying themselves as spiritual leadership. That does not mean that they are called and qualified or it makes them any different or any better than anyone else. Several of them also wanted to clarify that they don't necessarily always pay for these clothing items. Some are gifts to them, and so they're not always paying for them. But there is this idea or notion, even an assumption by a lot of people, sometimes an accusation, they are using the church's money to fund their lifestyle. Yes, excessive spending. When a spiritual leader decides to wear designer clothing, there is an assumption a lot of times that they are using money, not just using the money, but using it inappropriately to fund their lifestyle beyond what they are being given or what they are expected to do responsibly. And so there is a question here about responsibility, not just responsibility, but also stewardship, using wisdom as it relates to several of these leaders. But also I will add to, and this is one thing that they wanted, that they made clear, is that several of them do have also multiple streams of income associated with the idea of celebrity as it relates to leaders or those in ministry areas. Several of them are not just pastoring, they're writing books, they're speaking, they're teaching, they may be coaching or consulting or doing other aspects of business that funds their lifestyle. It funds their clothing, it funds their endeavors. And so that is something to take into consideration, that they may not just be using, or I say using, but it may not just be a salary from the church. In fact, some of them they may not even take a salary from the church anymore, but they may be doing other aspects or other endeavors, other business endeavors that fund their lifestyle. And really that is also a characteristic of celebrity pastors or celebrity association in ministry spaces. Interestingly, a lot of audience viewers also took the time to reflect on their clothing. In the comments of several posts with pastors wearing designer clothing, some people who were viewing these pastors who usually have more visibility, the other pastors or leaders actually saw them and it caused them to reflect, saying, I hope that nobody says this about me. And so that was something too, where you realize that there are other people who are watching, basically watching this go down, and they are questioning even their own choices or how people are perceiving them. And so there's an aspect of audience reflection and really taking to heart and to note, okay, what am I doing? Am I looking like this? And even those who choose not to, and I'm talking about people, of course, that maybe choose not to wear designer clothing. When I say people, those in ministry, pastors, there were those that said, look, for example, I get my clothes or shoes from Goodwill. Like, this is not even applicable to me. I don't understand why they're doing that. So I will add this point for consideration. Demographics like race, ethnicity, gender, even location, church size, all of those things can have an impact on the perception of celebrity pastors, as well as how they choose to represent themselves in society. Depending on who we are, our identity, it can impact what we choose to wear, how we choose to behave. Yes, that all falls into how we communicate on a regular basis. I will also add to, there were people that praised pastors for their decisions in wearing designer apparel or just even nice clothing, and even those who were more practical in their spending habits. Everyone wasn't wearing designer clothing. There were some featured on the Instagram pages that I studied that wore watches under $100. And there were people that praised their selections just as much as some people who said that there are pastors or leaders that deserve to have nicer things for the sacrifices that they make to serve others. Also understanding too that all of their money may not be coming in, meaning all of the money to purchase these things may not just be coming from the church, that they do have other streams of income that can support their decisions and their choices in clothing. And so that is also important when we consider this, as well as cultural relevance is something that definitely comes into play. They don't want to look corny. They don't want anybody to see them as corny. They don't want to be the person that's not culturally appropriate or fit for the moment. Like, they want to make sure they have the right fit for the right moment. It is something that several did share in media and share throughout this study, that they were concerned about. And it's something that they wanted to get right, whether it's dressing down or dressing more casual than dressing up. You have some pastors that are actually more apt and more comfortable with actually dressing more business, or maybe dressing in more of a suit, or even formal attire as a robe or clergy attire, as opposed to dressing what we call dressing down, or dressing, in Jordans. But they're trying to figure, sneakers. They're trying to figure out what works. Now, with that, there are definitely some that project this more than others. They want people to know that they're wearing these things, and that can come across as basically doing too much. Like, you're doing too much. Do you want to, like, you really want everybody to see you doing this? And so they're a lot looking for a balance. They're trying to find the balance in what they're doing. And that's not always easy for them, as I'm sure that in some cases it isn't for other people with public platforms. But it is something that a lot of pastors are trying to navigate, especially as they are also trying to relate to various generations, but particularly younger audiences, when research and statistics at times have shown in the past several years that church membership is declining in society. And yes, like many people with public platforms, ministry leaders are concerned about negative comments, which do happen, of course, on posts of them, depending on where they are or what they are wearing or what they're saying while they're wearing designer clothing. And so that's something that they're also navigating and trying to navigate, as well as I'm sure many of their staff that are with them. And so I'm not sure that everyone always cares about that, but it's definitely something that I was interested in studying, not only the perception of pastors, but also how they feel in the meantime as well. How is it to be a pastor in this time that we're in, where so much of our lives is actually shared on social media and for the world to see? And of course, the larger the platform, the more that people are watching and have more to say. I hope that this brief video, I know I kind of knocked them out, that it is something that hopefully just gives, again, a little more insight into this issue, sometimes which can be a controversy, but definitely, hopefully, it take from it what you can or will. And hopefully I look forward to seeing you at the next time and next video. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.